Is Nigeria living through 1929 again? Because in 1929, something happened that shook the entire country. And when you look closely at Nigeria today, some of the signs feel familiar. My name is Anderson. I love talking about history, especially the history of Africa and the wider world. And one thing I've learned is simple: history keeps repeating itself. This is history in your face. In 1929, thousands of women in southeastern Nigeria rose up against British colonial rule. This event became known as the Aba Women's Riot. This was not random violence. It didn't happen overnight. It started with something very simple. People lost trust in authority. And once trust breaks down in a society, history shows us that anything can happen. Now, to truly understand what happened in 1929, you first need to understand how Nigeria was governed before colonial rule. You see, Nigeria was not one united country before the British. Different societies had different systems of government. In the north, there were the emirs, one recognized authority figure, one central ruler. So for the British, controlling the north was easier. You get the emir on your side and you could influence the people. In the west, there were the Obas, again, recognized traditional rulers with authority and legitimacy. But in the east, especially amongst the Igbos, it was completely different. The Igbo society is often described as acephalous, meaning a society without one central political authority. So power was spread across communities. Leadership came from respect, from achievement, morality, age grades, title systems like the Ofor title holders, the Ozo title holders, the respected elders, and so on. So there were not kings imposed from above. Their authority came from the people, and this created a problem for the British because colonial rule works better when power is centralized. So what did they do? They created the warrant chief system. These warrant chiefs were mostly handpicked by the British, loyal to colonial authorities, not chosen by the people. And in many cases, the people did not trust them. And over time, many of them became abusive. They collected taxes aggressively, they exercised power harshly. The people tolerated it for a while, but only for so long. Then came the issue that changed everything. Rumors started spreading in 1929. Women believed they were about to be taxed. Now remember, the men were already taxed heavily, and many people already believed the warrant chiefs were too oppressive. So when the women heard they too would now be taxed, fear spread quickly. And for many women, this was personal. These women were mostly traders, farmers, and market organizers, so their numbers gave them enormous influence in local economy. But despite this, they were largely excluded from colonial decision-making. So the fear of taxation felt like more pressure, more control, more exploitation, and eventually the women said, enough is enough. The women organized, thousands of them, not hundreds, thousands. And they used the traditional protest method known as sitting on a man. Now, sitting on a man has both a physical and symbolic meaning. Physically, it means a man has been overpowered by a woman, something seen as deeply humiliating in a society where men were often considered stronger. But symbolically, it meant a traditional form of protest where women used public shame and social pressure to force leaders to listen and give in. So the women sang, they danced, they mocked the officials, they surrounded colonial buildings, they publicly shamed leaders and disrupted colonial activities. This was resistance, an organized type of resistance. And it was powerful. But then things escalated. The courts were attacked, the government buildings were damaged, colonial authorities panicked, and the British responded with force. Soldiers opened fire, and in the end, dozens of women were killed. Some estimates say over 50 women died and even many more were injured. But here is the real question. Why did it get this bad? Because the issue was never just about tax. It was deeper than that. People felt ignored, unheard, controlled by a system they did not trust. And when these feelings build up over time, people react. History shows this over and over again. Now, let's come to today, because this is where things get a little more interesting. Let us compare 1929 and today. So in 1929, people distrusted colonial authorities. The warrant chief systems were seen as imposed leaders. Economic hardship was increasing, the women felt excluded, rumors created fear, and the people protested publicly. Now, today, many Nigerians openly distrust political elites. Some people believe leaders are imposed rather than truly chosen. In fact, there are debates about election credibility, economic hardship is affecting daily life. Many women still remain politically marginalized. Social media spreads information quickly, and people express their anger publicly. Now, let me be very clear. The situations are not exactly the same. Nigeria today is not under colonial rule, but the pattern, the emotional pattern, feels familiar. When people feel ignored, pressured, excluded, they simply respond. And honestly, I cannot even begin to talk about this without mentioning EndSARS in 2020. Again, young people felt ignored, they felt unheard, they believed the system was not protecting them, and so they protested. Different generation, different issue, but once again, a struggle over trust. History may not repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. And the Aba Women's Riot teaches us something powerful. When trust breaks down, even small issues can become major crises. The danger does not begin with protest. It begins when people stop believing that the system works for them. Nigeria has come a long way, but history is still speaking. The question is, are we listening?